calling this meeting to order on August 3rd at 11:01 p.m. AM, sorry. Introductions around the room. We'll start with Mr. Lang on the left.
Marty Lane, Chief Human Resource Officer.
Andy Ralph, Chief Financial Officer.
Jared Bryant, Superintendent. Corey Hayes, Teacher and Anchorage Education Association President.
Margot Bellamy, School Board.
Amanda Foster, Executive Assistant to the Board.
Kelly Lessons, Board Member.
And do we have anyone connected on
Let me. We have Mike Fleckenstein and Carl.
Carl,
I think we need to promote.
I just promoted him. Thank you.
And that would be Board Member Jacobs.
Yes.
Okay, with that, we'll go to the first item for discussion, which is a review of our board policies 0411, 0500, 0510, 0520, and 0530. I'm trusting anyone that has concerns read those before. Dr. Bell.
Yes, thank you. And I'm really glad that we're getting back to our routine of looking at our policies at least, even if we don't make changes. But in 0411, I think that's our service animal policy. The policy speaks to service animals. Those are animals that are trained to provide a service. It does not speak to comfort and pets. And which is, so my point is, to what extent are we, I don't know, I don't want to say enforcing, but observing the policy. I see random pets in our buildings. They're not service animals. They're not providing a service. They are there for another purpose. Now, if the board wants to have, and the whole intent, I think, behind 411 is to make sure that individuals have a safe learning environment and that that environment is free of, that individuals with disabilities can access learning and activities. That also includes kids like my grandson. One of them is fearful of dogs, period. I don't care how sweet and loving and kind they are. But I do see, when I'm in and out of buildings, I see a lot of pets and comfort animals. And I don't know if the administration might not be able to do it today, but maybe give us I'd like to know what are we doing relative to 411 in our, are we enforcing the policy as it's written? Number one. Number two, if not, do we need to make adjustments? And it's not the kids bringing these, it's an adult issue. Let me make that real clear. It's not the kids bringing their pets to school. It is, it's the adults bringing their fur babies to school. So, and I think that is and from a risk management perspective, where does that put us should something happen to anyone that's in our building, whether that's a visitor, a student, or a staff member. So I don't want to change the policy, but I do want to know to what extent it's being enforced. Are we at risk in any way? And if there are changes, or maybe we need administrative guidelines, because I don't think there are any administrative guidelines attached.
I think that's a good point, and that's something that I can raise with Jim's team in risk management, just to double check whether or not there's an administrative regulation that touches on this, because we certainly don't want an animal to cause a safety concern, regardless of who created it. So I agree, it either needs to be an administrative regulation or an adjustment to the policy. I think regulation should be sufficient, but we'll double check.
Yeah, if I could add to that, I did ask Dante Powell and Andrew Ball, our two employee relations specialists, to review this and make sure that there haven't been any updates under ADA as well.
Okay.
I didn't get that done for this meeting, but they are taking a look at that. I believe we have a service animal guide that would probably serve as a functioning AR, should be attached to this. So I'll review that as well.
Great.
I can add a little bit of flavor to what you brought up, Margot, in that we have done some servicing of principals on a fairly regular basis to remind them what questions they can ask when a member of the public brings an animal into the building. There is some very specific questions that you can ask and you can't ask around service animals. And so it's probably would be good for us to remind our academic divisions that we do that again. That often happens for events where people want to bring animals in. When you talk about staff, are you talking about mostly like teachers and stuff wanting to bring in dogs and keep them in the
Teachers,
classroom?
administrators.
Okay.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah, non-service animals, just pets.
yeah,
They
they're
don't
pets,
have-
they're pets. I think, the reason we have policy came about probably in I can't remember, but it was in response to, an OCR complaint. And so we had to come up with those guidelines that you mentioned, and we had to adjust our policy, which was approved at the time. But I just know that over the last few years, I have observed that it's becoming more and more lax. I know I'm not an anti-animal person. But I have to look at this from for me, it's a 10,000 foot level or higher that we have to look to see. And I don't think, so maybe that's all we need is a refresh and a training. Reminder to people that, what service animals are, what our policy is. And then I'll just leave it up to the superintendent whether or not he feels that there is a need for a revision at some future point, or if administrative guidelines would kind of clarify the policy. So that's the only thing, that's the only, my only comment on 411.
That's right.
Boy, I'm probably gonna open a can of worms, but I just want to clarify. Service animal obviously has a definition and usually a certificate or some type of registry that goes with it, right? Because I know I went through it for my own dog that was at Polaris for 5 years, right? Through pet partners. But are you also, like, I just want to, there's service animals, and there was the horse that was at Russian Jack for a long time.
The service
We've done- Yeah, we've done lots of things. So, and then there's critters. Critters being extending everything else, right? And I just want to, I want to clarify.
Pets are, maybe
I know.
maybe, yeah. So critters would be like
there's
pets.
Well, there's two separate things going, right? So whether I have like birds in my room, I had parakeets for a long time, hamsters. Over the course of my career, I had fish. I'm just,
Right, but
it's a
they're
double.
usually enclosed in a container, right? A hamster should be, yeah, and so,
I'm just saying. And I guess I'm reaching out to the whole community here.
yeah,
We probably need to, I mean, they
I
play a
agree.
really important role in schools, right?
They do.
With kids and stuff. So
yeah,
I just want
and this is absolutely not that. The policy speaks to
We're talking about
animals who
bigger-
are trained to provide a service. If a
Everybody-
parakeet is trained to provide a service for an individual
I'm not
with a
asking.
disability, then that would put them in that category. But if they're in the room and they're providing an academic if they're there for an academic purpose, then, they should be allowed to be there with the proper safety protocols. So I just think we need to revisit the policy and make sure it is in alignment with what we're actually allowing people to do in our building. And you're right, critters included.
Well, that's why I'm kind of, that's why I'm kind of, pets is extremely general.
It is.
Yeah, and so I just want to,
It is.
and I'm obviously a huge advocate for
Oh, yeah.
critters when they are properly maintained, cared for, safe,
Absolutely.
everything else. So, I mean, we've all known, right? That they can play a really important part.
Absolutely. And
For our
that's
students.
not, and I don't think the policy is locking those out. I think that the policy is, what constitutes a service animal in the context of individuals with disabilities and or other kinds of limitations.
Note for the record that member Wilson has joined us.
Yeah.
I guess I wanted to echo my support for critters who do academic and social and emotional work in classrooms. So I support them as learning
Oh, absolutely.
devices, for lack of a better
Yeah.
word. But in the policy, it is a little bit fuzzy where it says service animal does not include an animal whose primary work or task is to provide emotional support, well-being, comfort, and companionship. A lot of people do consider
And this was
those
written
animals.
pre-SEL.
So I guess
Yeah.
I was really
Yes, yeah.
eager to see revised guidelines.
I'm guessing your son's a.
I mean, to that point, when I was a principal, we had a student
Not just my
suicide,
grandson.
but the chaplain
Yeah,
brought in.
not only that,
their
he's
comfort
got
dogs.
allergies.
That was
and
amazing
one
to
has
watch a
phobia,
group of
one
high
had
school
that.
students sit around that animal and cry and breathe. I mean, it was.
I'd be supportive
very
of
important,
investing
yeah.
in a whole fleet of golden retrievers for ASD. I think that was my personal stance.
I'll note, I counted the pony in the hall.
Oh,
Small
yeah.
pony, but,
I actually put booties on one in school one time.
and the diamond, the kids wanted pets in the classroom, and we just live trapped some mice,
Yeah,
which simply distinguished them from the mice that live there versus the ones in the aquarium.
yeah. So, and I think if animals are in our buildings, they should be for academic and or academic,
Service academic.
service,
and social
academic and social emotional purposes, yeah.
So-
And right now, that's not clear, and I think we can do it through administrative regulations, but I'm gonna leave it up to the superintendent and his staff.
So, ask Ms. Foster to put this, before 11 on the agenda for a month from now.
Okay.
And we can push that off if more time is needed. But it sounds like in writing the regulations, it might also call for some changes in policy. We'd be glad to consider it then as well. So, any other comments on this topic? Seeing none, any comments on any of the other policies up for routine review?
Scroll to the next, what's the next one, 510?
And I will add that, these policies can be amended at any
It's-
time. This is just going to take a moment to give them a special law.
I didn't have any others unless anybody else did.
I had a question on 510
510,
and do we have one? Did one of these take place last year? I simply tried to Google it, but I didn't, this was nothing that I found. I know that Deed has report cards.
I think
But
that's,
that's their prerogative to produce. But this is a district produced, and I vaguely remember some sort of a shiny, colorful publication when I first onboarded. So that would have been a couple of years ago, but I don't know that I could, I couldn't locate it online if there was one. And it also struck me, just reading this, that a lot of the goal monitoring that we do is the sort of thing that would be part of a report card, but it also seems a little bit silly to duplicate things.
right.
So I don't have a specific concise recommendation right now, other than that I was scratching my head looking for whether or not this actually exists. And maybe thinking that we could do a better job of tying up our goal monitoring reports with a bow on an annual basis.
And, so and I'll go back and look, I remember lessons, I think in life, because the state has not always done district report cards. And when they started that, I want to say, I think it was a year before I came on board, maybe it was 2017. But when they started that, the board at the time pivoted it to put that information on our site as opposed to us reduplicating the
Okay.
state report card.
So
So,
I guess, I mean,
yeah. So
that's pretty clear. It says that we're gonna prepare
It
and
does, so
disseminate something.
so then either we're gonna do that or we're gonna change this.
Right.
To say, I mean, that we're going to pivot to the
And
state.
And I
report
think us having ownership over it
Yeah.
is probably in our best interest, right? I mean, especially if you were to tailor it towards, well, these are our goals. This is where we are with progress towards our goals. you know, over the gifted year.
Mhm.
I think that allows us to tell our story
Yeah.
a lot more reliably.
Yeah.
Than the state. I mean, think about, you know, what is our story? Well, part of our story is the maintenance work that happened, you know, over the summer. There are a lot of stories in ASD. So I think there's a lot of value to us owning, and this is like also part of, you know, an expanded communications sort of.
Yeah, it used to
Program.
be a handout. I think
It-
it sent it
it
to
was
every
a-
single family.
It was a shiny handout, and it may not need to go just to parents. I think
Right.
that there's, I mean, I just saw a recent study saying that it's like that schools are doing pretty great. It's people who don't
Don't
have
have
kids in
access
school
to
systems
Yeah,
that are a lot more skeptical of schools.
yeah.
So I think that there is a lot of value to having a report card. I don't exactly know what it needs to look like, but I guess for the purpose of this, for this meeting, I'd say maybe let's hold on to it
Mhm.
and continue the discussion. And maybe hear from administration next time about what you guys would envision in.
So, yeah, I'm trying to think who's here that would have been a part of the, I think, in the administration. Well, Kirsten probably would have been here. I'm just trying to figure out who would, because I think it came from assessment and evaluation.
In
I think
collaboration,
that's
I
where
think,
it came from,
with
with
communication.
communication, yeah, right.
And I
So-
suspect that through the pandemic and a really small communications department, we may not have carried that forward. But I remember that publication you're referencing coming out.
But I mean, yeah, I think there's a lot of value to that.
Morning. Morning, welcome. So I recommend that we take another look at, as the superintendent and staff, take another look at 510 as well, and come back with an update. I agree with Member Hutchins that in light of our new goals and guardrails and our monitoring process, giving end of year report are not just to our families, but to the community to be, and not just rely on the state's information, I guess, is what I'm hearing.
These are what our community's goals are.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
what the district has done.
And it can be
to work
focused
towards
on our
it.
goals and guardrails.
Right, and you can talk about how we've allocated funds in support of each of the goals, each of the guardrails.
Okay,
For the communication.
back to you, Mr. Chair.
And note for the record that we've been joined by Scary Drummond, who's a former member of this body and a legislator that always prioritized public education for you. So thank you for coming today.
And Pat is now on and he has his hand up.
And Member Higgins has joined us online.
We done with that? Are we gonna pivot or are we gonna finish this? Oh, Pat has his hand up.
Oh.
It might be
It's
this.
not moving.
Yeah, Mr.
Pat,
Higgins.
you need to move over to panelists.
Hello. Yep.
Let's go ahead and move to item 2 real quick. That's CWA update in August.
He's on there now.
Okay.
Okay, that would be Carl.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So
And move on to item 2.
at President Bellamy's request, and in conjunction with the board adoption of board policy 3311.2, I sought about making suggestions for President Bellamy to name members of the SCWA review team that will comprise the team for this academic year. The SCWA review team is comprised of one member of designated by the administration. Dr. Bryan indicated that choice would be Mr. Dave Whiting. My recommendations to President Bellamy include a representative from industry would be Alicia Amberg with AJC, a representative from the building trades, which would be Bronson Fry, who is their current chair, and then 2 members representing the board. My recommendations to President Bellamy include, as chair, Pat Higgins, and the second person would be Andy Holloman. The board policy is written in such a way that we can, and President Bellamy, as the person naming the members, can choose committee members to replace board members, positions potentially. In my conversation with President Bellamy, I suggested that for at least the first year, while we navigate this new policy, which is a significant one, it might be wise to have board members directly involved to witness areas of improvement in current board policy, as well as any potential revisions we might wish to make, around this time next year. With that said, I think next steps in the process, should President Bellamy agree with the recommendations, would be to officially state as much, and then should those recommendations carry, the chair of the committee, Member Higgins, would work with Mr. Whiting to facilitate scheduled meetings, which should start this month. I think one of the first orders of business should be to review the master template, ensure that the review team is in agreement on the composition. If there's any changes that need to be made, those should come back before governance and before the full board if need be, and then engage in the work as outlined in board policy 3311.2. So just wanted to offer that quick update. Would be glad to answer any questions.
Okay. Right. Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you, Member Jacobs. I accept the report and the recommendations. We are with the launch of, actually, I think if the team gets together, the review team gets together and get organized this month, they will probably be launching in September. So that would probably be a clarification. I also confirmed that the administration's, Mr. Whiting will be the administration's recommendation on this review team. For those of you who might, you might want to go back and reread 3311.2. It's the duties of each of the team, the review team is very specific. And I think we will hopefully stay within the framework and the guidelines of the policy. Are there any questions for Member Jacobs? Okay. Well, it's only been a year and a half. Thank you, Member Jacobs. I appreciate it. So I think the next step then would be for Dr. Bryant for us to, and Member Higgins and Mr. Whiting to get together and decide on, lay out the next steps really, so that we can look at likely a September launch, not an August launch. Because I think we need time to get people together on the same page and then put processes in place to get the work done. Okay, thank you.
Comments or any action we need to take on this? Seeing, hearing none, move to item 3, draft revised board goals.
And that's really just an announcement. I do need to, the board began working on revising our goals. We revised what we have or in the process of during our retreat. We are not finished. It's a long process because we've also, there's a piece for the administration. We're still waiting on to hear from the state on the Alaska Star Cut scores. So there's a lot of missing pieces still, but we are poised and ready to continue the conversation. And with the board's indulgence, I would like to schedule and to capitalize on the facilitator being in town during that time. I'd like to schedule a meeting, a goals revision meeting on September 16th. It's a Saturday morning, 9 to 12. But if at all possible, please, if we can try to make that work so that all board members can have input. We had input during the retreat from probably half the board, but we really, in order for it to be, for us to get to really understand the the direction, I think we need to have a real focus session. So I would like to get the board's approval to do a goals and guardrail planning session on 9/16.
I have a question
Yes.
related to that. I just wanted to share that that is the day of the AASD Fall Academy, that same weekend. And I know that, I don't know what facilitator you have in mind, but I glanced at the AASB and I saw.
Oh,
that-
it'll be Cindy, Council of
Okay.
Great Cities.
Okay, okay.
And yeah, and I did take that, thank you for that though, but I did take it into consideration and we will, after we're done at noon, I'm hoping we just shoot back downtown. At least that's my plan. But that's the only, Cindy's in town doing some work with another, in the state, doing some work with another district. And I'm hoping she can, and she's agreed to fit us in if we could do it on that weekend. So thank you guys. So Amanda, if you could send that.
Invite.
The info, yes. That's it for that.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, item 4, timing of submitting items to governance.
Yeah.
And I'll start by just saying that governance is under the same constraints of the Open Meeting Act as our general board meetings. And specifically to Mr. Higgins, I told him to put it on the agenda, but what I really meant was it would come up under new business. Because we do have that avenue to introduce things here that way. And I think he has something for that. So I forget, what is the last date prior to a meeting we can change the agenda?
I think it's technically 24 hours, but the norm we have set is 72. I can send you a legal opinion that I got if you would like.
I'll take your word for it. So yeah, I'll say that we always want to try to get 3 days notice when we can. But those are for actual changes to the
That's,
agenda.
yeah,
New business can be done on the spur of the moment, although it's always nice to have a little bit of advance warning for things. But yeah, we'll address that today. Yes.
So the part of this, we had part of this conversation during the retreat, and I remember Lessons had a concern relative to, for those revisions, mostly for things that if we're going to be wanting to revise a policy, it is rare that it'll come in, while it's rare that it'll come to governance and then just go right out of governance on the same day. We have been doing that on some things that were time sensitive. Although if we need to be more thoughtful about giving board members time to look at whatever it is you want to bring forth. And so that they are able to read it, think about it, digest it, and then analyze it. And that takes time. So I think that if the expectation for the 72 hours has been our practice, if we can stick to that, I mean, for the public notice, for board members, though, I think as, you know, when our regular meeting is over, we plan the agenda the very next day. That's 2 weeks out. Now, I'm not suggesting we have to do it for our committee meetings, but we really should be more timely, give each other more time, especially if we're looking at making policy changes. So setting your agendas early enough to where we can give board members adequate time, and then we can also give the public adequate time to see what's going to be there.
And Carl has his hand up.
Member Jacobs.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, President Bellamy, for the remarks. I did want to just confirm that our board policy says our agenda should be published 72 hours ahead of time, which is typically why we see our full business meeting agendas published on Saturday ahead of our Tuesday meeting. We had talked about having a new business section of our board meeting, which I was vehemently opposed to, in part because the full board can make policy revisions and make changes to how we operate as a group, whereas a committee can't do that in and of itself alone. And so for that reason, I think the new business section is a great way to act as a quasi non-action item section, or an area where board members can articulate something they're working on as an area of interest, to identify a partner to collaborate with that can then be placed on the next agenda. So I think the way we are set up currently works great. But I do think it's important that we make sure our agendas are out 72 hours with the appropriate items on them. And then for folks who miss that cutoff, that new business section there is perfect for that reason, to get ahead of it for the following month. So I think we have a good system in place.
Okay. Point of clarification for this group. If a policy is slated to be reviewed, or if somebody brings something up and is working on editing a specific policy, I think one thing that I would find helpful personally is if the proposed revisions were also available ahead of time.
Yes,
So if I'm editing policy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
yeah,
I think it would benefit the body for me to bring my revisions to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 72 hours, so that everyone else can look at them. And I guess that's what I would request, is that revisions also follow, also hew to that 72-hour window.
and that's a good point. I mean, in my mind, that's what it should be. So if I'm bringing forth the resolution or policy, I'm bringing forth what I want that to look like. What, and if there is existing policy, we should show what the changes are gonna look like. So I agree with that 100%.
And then that would give board members that time to respond.
Yeah, and I think we're doing it, we just gotta consistently do it. I think that's the only reason I put it on. It's not that we're doing a bad job, guys, it's just that there's so many pieces, and there's so many things coming up that I don't want anything to get lost. And so if you have something that you really want the board to take note of, then please put it in writing, and please get it to Amanda in as timely a manner as possible, Amanda and myself, so that we can make sure. And if you miss it for a committee meeting, you can do it under new business. Yeah, so yeah, we just gotta do our homework, do it timely, and share it with the board members before the meeting starts. Not during the meeting, before the meeting starts. Thank you. That's all. That's the only reason I had that. I asked to put that on the agenda.
And Pat has his hand up.
Sure.
Member Higgins?
You're muted.
Sounded good though, didn't I? Let me, two things I'll say. One, I apologize for getting this late. I did send it out to the board. I did not get it to Andy for whatever reason. I sent it to others initially, and just to do it. And I was under the impression, since we last governance committee, we said we would bring it up in August, that it was automatically there. So my assumption was wrong. But I'd also say that under new business, even on the full board, I recall a time where new business was brought about an issue. I think it was member Holloman, but and we dealt with it. I'm hoping that at least in this meeting, we can at least, without taking action, discuss it. We have a former board member present to comment on it. That will be of information important going forward. And I will have other former board members join up as needed to overcome any concerns or issues that are in regards to the importance of the Operations Audit Committee. There's been a 2-year event that I've been trying to push for at this particular point, and I would appreciate at least the support to be able to allow former board member Harriet Drummond, also former chair of the Education Committee for the state legislature to make comments and to give her that opportunity now that she has shown up for that purpose.
We can certainly do that.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, just to clarify, the prior discussion had nothing to do with the
Correct.
with that, with the
This
audit.
particular issue.
Yeah, okay.
Any other comments? And I'm thinking that something would be helpful for board members is just a flow chart about how you bring business to the board. What things go through what committees, what the timeline is for committees to work on it, and how that moves to the board agenda. Because we do have that process where things come to a committee first, rather than being brought up in board meeting. So, yeah, I will spend a few minutes and start something that I'm certain will need direction.
I'm happy to collaborate with you on that.
Okay, thank
Thank you.
you. Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, moving to item 5, indigenous language resolution.
And that was a question. I think in our May meeting, our second meeting in May, we got a resolution. I just want to know what's the status? Did we need to do anything with that? Or was that the Native Advisory Committee's resolution that they just submitted to the board?
Right, so it appears that they submitted this resolution to the board, but this was also the document they reviewed with the administration prior to its
To the
going
board, to the board?
to the board,
Okay.
where we sat down with the president of the NAC and we reviewed this document and came to consensus as to what the joint priority is, which would be indigenous language immersion programs.
Mhm.
So that's where I left at with that meeting. I think you'd be prudent if we met with the new president, now that Sewell's graduated on to doing amazing things. Just to be clear on what the next steps are, but we're very excited to collaborate.
So is there anything in your opinion, what is the next step for the board?
I don't believe that there
There
is a
is?
next
Okay,
step for
it's
the
on- it's
board.
on there.
The only thing is that as we go into the budget solutions process, I did share a commitment to growing our UPIC immersion program. So that would be the one thing that would come to the board during the budget
Budget,
development process. But I believe last time we spoke about that program, we were going to support it anyway.
Thank you.
I guess I wanted to just refresh my memory, and I'm looking at this document, I have it printed out at home somewhere. Part of the resolution is that ASD elevates indigenous language education as part of its strategic plan and formal goals and guardrails outlined through 2026. So I just, if we're talking about our board goals, it seems relevant to acknowledge that that's a part of this resolution. It's not something that we've targeted as a SMART goal.
As a SMART goal, right, but it could be an interim. Yeah, so put it up for 9/16, put it on your list. So.
Okay.
And I will say that in the meeting, that piece was not a topic of discussion, as they
Discussion,
wanted to
right.
double down on the indigenous language. But perhaps that was something that they had wanted to talk with the board about. I'm not sure why this didn't come up in the
So
conversation.
we will be meeting with them. Who's got the Native Advisory Committee this year? Is it still me? Or Carl? I think it's me.
I would have to check, and Carl does have his hand up, so maybe he can speak to that.
Member Jacobs?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I recall when we last spoke about this in governance that Dr. Bryant, which is something I appreciate, reiterated his support for the immersion program, which I think was one plank of the resolution. My recollection is similar to what Member Lessons alluded to, is there were other more structural changes, or at least review for structural changes requested in the resolution as well. And if there isn't consensus from administration to adopt the recommendations of the resolution, it would be at least my request in the form of maybe it's an information request as to the administration's stance on why we wouldn't want to adopt the initiatives laid out in the resolution, some of the reasonings behind it. I'm interested to learn more because I do support the immersion, for the growth of the immersion program. I think that's important, but I think there's more broader structural, at least considerations to be made. And I'm thinking back to our CKLA curriculum adoption process, and that process still, I have some reservations about how we integrated our team, and even potentially the structure of administration and who has seats at the table. And so I think there's other conversations to be had there, but I want to be mindful of my role as a board member. So interested to learn more from administration. I don't think this is necessarily the forum to do it, but prior to creating a resolution which would simply mirror the language of what the NAC requested the board to support, if we can get on the same page between the board and administration as to what we shouldn't be pushing for, what not to work against each other, I guess is kind of my request before we get too far down the road. The other thing that I would say is I believe we settled on that President Bellamy and I would co-represent the NAC this year, which I think is in part what we did last year, which I'm happy to do. But that's going off of my recollection. Thank you.
So am I correct? We don't need to take action on this
No.
today?
No, it was just an update, see if we needed to do anything. But superintendent has it under control.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, moving to new business. We do have an item for new business, I'm correct. And Amanda, do you have a copy of it?
A copy of,
What member Higgins is proposed?
I have never received a copy, no.
I don't have a hard copy of it. Member Higgins, do you have a hard copy of what you're proposing?
I think I have one on, I can,
You want me to read it?
yeah, I can, what?
Oh, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
So the document says School Board Operations Audit Committee. The president of the Anchorage School Board will establish a School Board Operations Audit Committee to oversee audits of ASD departments and operations. The school board will approve departments and operations to be conducted each year. I think that means reviews. To be audited each year. The committee shall work with the superintendent to develop the scope of the audits and work with the Council of Great City Schools to obtain auditors from other Council of Great City Schools members. The auditor's findings and recommendations will be provided to the Operations Audit Committee. The members of the Operations Audit Committee and auditors will present the final report to the school board.
Member Higgins, did you want to speak to this?
Looks like he just walked away.
Member Higgins? I don't know, Harry, do you know what he wanted you to talk about?
I do.
If you'd like to have the floor and talk about it a little bit.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
Come on, you can come on.
Oh, thank you very much.
Good morning, and thank you so
Good
much
morning.
for allowing me to address you this morning. My name is Harriet Drummond. I was elected 3 times to the Anchorage School Board and then 2 terms on the Anchorage Assembly. And most recently, I served 10 years in the Alaska State House. I was a member of the House Education Committee for all 10 years and served as chair or co-chair for my last 6 years. I am here to speak out in favor of reestablishing the board's audit committee. I believe it is critical for the benefit of all students and the public to fulfill your obligation as a board. I served with Mr. Higgins's wife, Patty Higgins, on this board in 1994 through 1996, so I have known Pat for a very long time. And when he approached me on this issue, I was frankly shocked that ASD was not doing regular operational audits. As you know, you're responsible for the operation of the second largest public entity in the state of Alaska, serving over 40,000 students and their families and employing thousands of professional and caring teachers and staff. You are responsible for 90 facilities and the most square footage of buildings and real estate in Alaska. In my 9 years on the board, from 1994 to 2003, ASD grew from serving 40,000 students to just under 50,000, from majority Caucasian to minority students in that 9 years. We built dozens of new schools and regularly slashed $25 million or more from our annual budgets. And $25 million was a lot in those days compared to today's values. As you know, you are responsible for being the voice of the public, providing direction to the administration and holding the administration accountable. This comes directly from the National School Boards Association. Audits utilizing the Council of Great City Schools are very inexpensive and provide outstanding assessments and recommendations. You get true subject matter experts from the largest school districts in the country. They cost you just for travel. Read the past audits if you are in doubt. Great City Schools auditors work with the administration and they address issues involving department operations and educational opportunities. ASD is way past due for a comprehensive curriculum audit, for example. During my time here, we reviewed curriculum at a minimum every 5 to 7 years. There was always a curriculum review going on. This is a clear opportunity that contributes to improving educational outcome for our students, as well as confidence in the public that you are doing your very best in this time of fiscal uncertainty to make every dollar count. The board and the administration work together in the audit process. It's quite objective and much better for the board to use a third party. In my day, we used the municipality's internal auditor for many of these audits. I don't know what the relationship with the school district is with the municipality at this point, and that might not be an option. But Great City Schools didn't even enter the picture until very late in my term. And it sounds like they're an excellent resource for which you already pay membership. I know other former board members feel strongly about this issue. And if you want to meet with them, please let me know. But I think this should be a simple decision. Thanks again for the opportunity to address you. And by the way, speaking of agendas, I was concerned about just showing up at this meeting and search for the agenda to see if there was an opportunity for public comment. Board docs had nothing but an empty space under the governance committee and no agenda link for August 3rd. Chair Holloman did send me a link that worked this morning, so thank you for that. I strongly suggest that you look at the ease of the public's access to your meetings and processes in your website. I am very experienced at looking things up in websites, particularly for school boards, and it's become much more difficult to find stuff on the ASD website in the last 10 or 15 years. So again, thanks for the opportunity to address.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for coming.
And I will say that finding agendas is not intuitive. It is a multi-step process, and the button for the agendas is usually off the screen at the bottom. You have to actually go to that meeting and then scroll, and then hit the button to see the agenda. So
And it's not very mobile friendly. That's part of the problem.
I can't even imagine.
I was not at a large enough screen to see that part.
Yeah,
So
but
thank
it's
you.
there.
Other comments, member Lessons?
Yeah, I wanted to speak to the fact, for the record, that the finance committee does approve a number of audits every year. I happen to have with me the internal audit report from February of student nutrition warehouse inventory controls. I believe that we're doing a P card audit right now.
Yeah, two or three going on.
And we're wrapping up our fixed asset.
Fixed assets. There was a warehouse audit, student nutrition. So there are a series of audits that have already occurred and are occurring
And those are through the municipals.
through the municipality. So that's separate than the council doing audits.
Right.
I could
That
just
there,
add that in addition to those audits, management regularly conducts third-party audits. So for example, my first 6 months, we did an audit of our talent management practices that led to some of the changes that we've talked about. We've done our own internal financial review from third party. We did a transportation audit, as we famously have talked about, over a couple of months. We did an equity audit that we've discussed numerous times. And a couple months ago, we did reach out to Great Heart to discover what types of options are there for us to explore additional audits into the human resources function and others. So I think really the conversation is less about whether the district should do audits or not do audits. We're certainly doing audits. I think the bigger governance question is as to what audit should we be doing and who should decide.
And then how those things are made available.
and how they're made available. I think those are really the fun questions.
I will say from a long time, like over a decade ago, this board had a document that listed all the audits. And I want to say there were over 100 that were done periodically. Obviously, they were not done every year, but every so many years. And I recall the audit committee, it did help consolidate what was being looked at and kind of provided an easy go-to source to see what was being reviewed and what the outcome was. And that might be what we need to do regardless of whether the committee is established or not. We don't necessarily have to do a separate process that the administration's already done, but we need to know that the administration did it, and ideally just know the outcome and results of it. You know, we don't get into changing the PCARD regulations or training or anything, but I think it's marvelously informative when we see the results of that audit, just understand what's being changed and what's being looked at. When we talk to members of the public, it's a really great thing to be able to say, well, yeah, we actually have people that look at that. This is what they find, this is what we fixed, et cetera, et cetera. So, but the question before us is, do we establish a separate committee? It's some different question.
Yeah, so, and I just wanted to piggyback on what member Lessons has indicated. I mean, we are doing audits. We may not be doing them the way some of us would like to see them done, but to say we're not doing audits is not a fair representation of the work of the board. I do, I think the finance, how we are working it now under finance, I think for me, that's a perfect fit. We have access, we have control, we have input, we get the final report back, we get to ask questions. And I guess I don't want to see the board take over. And I do agree that we work in collaboration with the superintendent. During the retreat, we had a brief conversation about audits, and I can't remember now if it was a sidebar conversation with member Higgins and the superintendent. But we did have a brief conversation, and because we did ask Mr. Hart to talk a little bit about, how that process works and what was available. The superintendent was very open to that. So I guess establishing another committee, I don't know that we need to do that. I just think we need to focus on the work and fitting it in within the structure that we already have. But we certainly are doing audits. I don't know how, so, and if there's a better way to do it, I don't know that I can serve on another committee. I think the way that we have our work divided right now between finance, governance, and communication, I mean, I think that works for us. And if we want to, I guess if the board wants to establish another committee, then we would change our policy to do that. Or we could, if we need an ad hoc committee, but I think the way we are working with the administration through our finance, to me, that works. But maybe apparently it's not working for everybody.
Member Higgins has returned and he has his hand up.
Member Higgins?
He's young me.
You're muted.
We can't hear you, Pat.
I can hear you now.
Yeah, we can hear.
Wait a
Yeah, I
minute.
can hear you now. Are you talking? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just a couple of comments here. I'm not saying governance couldn't do an audit committee's job, but it isn't. And right now, what we've got is finance audits are entirely separate. And for finance to be involved in controlling the audit of of special ed, curriculum, purchasing, food service, anything else we have out there. One time, the boards wanted to have an audit every 3 months because it just gave you every 3 years for different departments. We have a choice right now. If we do have issues, let's look into it and get an objective review. And an objective review means a third party, and you get it very cheap through the Council of Great City Schools. The alternative, if I've got concerns and I had some questions, do I go then to the ombudsman with the municipality, make it public, go about that? I don't want that type of politics. I want a third party to come in, look what we can do. They objectively look at things and do it. It may or may not be appropriate to be for the board, for the administration to govern what comes out or what doesn't come out of the audit. We're not running the audit. The audit would be done by the Council of Great City Schools. They would be working closely with the administration, not the board. But having that third party to me is absolutely critical. It has done a lot of things that would not have gotten done without that. The purchasing audit, when I was the chair of the audit, never would have been done by that administration. And it was a big outcome. I'm more confident right now with the current administration, but the process here that has been lost in this is a big issue to me.
And would add, I do see the problem when the audits are under the finance committee. There's sort of an assumption that you're talking about a financial audit, and the audits that Mr. Higgins is talking about are much broader than that. It's the same word but used in a really different way. And I guess I just wanted to say that much. Other comments, questions? My intent is that what we will do is add this to the agenda as an item in our next meeting,
No problem.
where we will actually take a vote on it. To follow my understanding of the Open Meetings Act, this introduces it to the committee, gives the administration time to fully react and be prepared at the next meeting, and it will be on the agenda, and we will take action.
And with someone who has a
I sent it to
copy,
you.
oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
I also want to say that this kind of goes to former member Drummond's, the information that no one can find isn't really information. If the administration's able to task someone, unfortunately, with drawing up a master list of audits, and we're able to place that in a position where at least the board and maybe the public can actually see it, reference it, be able to see the results. It's not information that shouldn't necessarily be out in public. I think that would be helpful for all of us, because there are times where you have this, an idea occurs to you, and you don't know where to look to find an answer to it. I send an email to the superintendent, and it generally gets answered really quick. But a list like that would, I think, inspire some confidence from the public, knowing that we do review all of these things. We are looking for changes. We are looking to optimize things all the time. And it happens on something with a schedule. So
you mean in addition to what we already have on it?
right, if I wanted to find all the audits,
Type in audit, takes you to audit. It needs-
I'll go take a look
Yeah,
at that.
but we can,
They're on the city
we can-
website too, all the internal.
and it's on the city website as well.
Awesome. So it may already be there.
And then-
which is-
Yeah, but it's like our math program, I mean, they're there, but we might be able to do a better job of making them accessible. And they're also on the muni site. For those audits.
So we will visit this formally in our next meeting. Any other comments or questions today? Seeing nothing. Is there any other new business for today? Seeing none.
Who's buying lunch? No, I'm joking.
I would happily entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned. Time for our next meeting.
I'm gonna type the number of folks
Oh, yes.
in and.
We'll make room.